For some reason, during the 1900s, it was determined that plow planes would be the nicest and prettiest tool in a cabinet maker or a carpenter's inventory. Nobody really knows why. They're basically just another type of wooden plane, a utilitarian tool, but for some reason it was decided that the plow planes would be the ones that really got prettied up. So I'd like to show you some of the prettier plow planes that we have for sale in the auction on April 1st. The first two are made by a company called Greenfield Tool Company. And Greenfield was known for making very high-end, very decorative planes. They are both made out of rosewood, which was a typical exotic hardwood used for high-end plow planes. And they are what's called ivory tipped, means on the ends of the arms they've got these ivory tips on them. But in addition, Greenfield was known for adding additional ivory in the nuts that hold the plow plane, to hold the arms onto the plane. This is a very typical type of high-end plane that Greenfield made. These are sometimes called ivory sandwich nuts, although Greenfield itself referred to them as banded. So you can see they're made of two pieces of ivory here with boxwood in between. This was one of Greenfield's highest end products. However, they also went a step further to get the really nice planes and made the nuts entirely out of ivory. And here you can see the outside nuts and the inside nuts are made of solid ivory, in addition to the fact that it has the ivory tips. So let me just say a word about ivory, by the way. This is elephant ivory. It is now illegal to import it in the United States or to sell it commercially. There is an exception, however, for antiques that are more than 100 years old. The item itself has to be at least 100 years old. It cannot have been repaired or refurbished using the materials that's the endangered species, the ivory in this case, within the last 100 years. And it has to have been imported into the United States since 1982. Or it has to have always been here. It has to have been manufactured in the United States and always been here. The way that we know that these particular planes are legal to own and to sell is because they're marked. They're marked as having been made by, in this case, the Greenfield Tool Company, a company that has not been in existence for more than 100 years. So we know it was made more than 100 years ago, and since it was made in Connecticut, we know that the ivory must have been imported more than 100 years ago. So these are legal to own and sell. But you have to be very careful if you have items that are less than 100 years old or you don't have a good provenance for them. So these are two from the Greenfield Tool Company. Another very common exotic wood that was used for plow planes is ebony. Some ebony is just so dark you don't even see the grade. It's actually, in my mind, kind of uglier than rosewood because there's no grain showing. But this is a nice type of ebony. This is a type called Macassar ebony, which has some grain in it. It's got some nice sapwood in it. So you can see that it shows up very nicely and the grain shows. And this is solid ebony. All the parts are ebony. They've got some very decorative nuts here. They did some decorative carving or turning on the ends of the arms. This particular plane was made by a plane maker named Linson DeForest, again of Connecticut, who was, like Greenfield Tool Company, known for very high-end, very attractive and exotic planes. Here's a darker ebony, a more typical ebony. You can see, you can just barely see the grain in it at all. There's a couple of interesting things about this plane. Number one is that here's a different type of ivory tip. You saw that the ivory tips on those planes was basically just kind of a flat cap. But here we have some nicely turned finials on the ends of the arms. That's another type of ivory tip that was used in a lot of these planes. The other thing about it is this has an ebony body, has an ebony fence, but the arms and the nuts are made of a wood called boxwood, which is a very dense, stable wood that was also often used for making rules because it's so stable. It doesn't change shape or change size a lot in different conditions. So it made a very good wood to make the arms and the nuts out of, because we knew that the makers knew that they would stay good and stable. In fact, if let me go back to a couple of these planes. Because it is so hard and dense, there was a practice of putting a strip of them in the fence here, where it rubs up against the wood so that it would protect it. So this is a practice known as boxing. There was actually some other woods used, but because the boxwood is so frequently used for that purpose, this practice is called boxing, no matter what kind of wood is used. You can see here, the fences on these two Greenfield planes are boxed. And as long as we're on the topic of boxwood, it was also, occasionally you will find plow planes that are solid boxwood. Now this is kind of hard to do because boxwood is not a big tree. You don't get huge chunks of wood out of it. It works really well for things like the arms and, as I said, rules. But to get pieces big enough to make the entire plane out of boxwood was kind of hard to do. So solid boxwood planes are also very highly prized. We're very high-end planes. This is one that's made by Casey & Company, a New York firm that used prison labor. So you can think about the fact that prisoners were being, required to make these planes while they were in jail for whatever purpose. Here's another style of turned ivory tips. You can see these are kind of like those flat ones, but they've got a little collar turned in them. They've got some decorative lines scribed into them. So here's a very attractive plane of solid boxwood. I think these planes are among the most beautiful tools ever made, and all 5 of these will be on sale at our auction on April 1st in York, Pennsylvania, and we hope to see you there.